In the state of Georgia, there are three major waterfalls nicknamed the Three Sisters: the Amicalola Falls, the Cochran Falls, and the Bearden Falls. Jacob, Ben, and I decided to hike up to the Cochran Falls, the second highest waterfall in Georgia, to better understand the temperate deciduous forest biome and all of its complexities. Alright, we just arrived at the mountain. We're about to go hiking.
Yeah.
Dude, it's gonna be easy. I mean, it's not gonna be tough. Ben says it's gonna be hard, but I mean, I don't believe
I doubt it.
I doubt it. It's gonna be fine. I'm probably gonna be done in like an hour. But yeah, I'm pretty hyped. Let's go. Yeah, it's my first time hiking.
Yeah, let's go.
Behind me, these trees, they don't have a lot of leaves because we are in the temperate deciduous forest. Now that means there are four distinct seasons: winter, summer, spring, and fall. When the climate gets cold, these trees, they all lose their leaves to conserve their energy. And so this is a map of all the deciduous forests in the world. So we're right there. And there's a couple in Asia, in Australia, and in Europe. So in a temperate deciduous forest, the average temperature is about 50 degrees Fahrenheit, and there's about 30 to 60 inches of rain per year. And because the dead leaves, die and release nutrients into the soil is very fertile.
So this is a great example of the food web, right? So we got some moss here, we got some lichen, and animals such as deer and squirrels, other small animals and mammals are gonna eat this moss. And only 10% of the energy is gonna be transferred to the next level, trophic level, because the rest is given off as cellular respiration or heat, right? So after the deer eats this moss, the next tertiary level up is gonna eat the deer, right? So possibly a bear, possibly a wolf, possibly a fox or a coyote is going to bring down that deer. But again, only 10% of the energy level is going to be transferred up. Now when these apex predators die, decomposers like this lichen right here is going to break down the body, right? And it's going to recycle the nutrients and put it back into the soil to allow more giant trees like this one to grow.
All right, so as Ben was talking about, this is a 10% rule. If you have 1,500 kilocalories of energy, you're only going to get 10% of that. So as you can see, as you go up to trophic levels, only 10% of that energy is transferred.
Some bear poop here, and bears are a good example of apex and keystone species. They're at the top of the food chain and they kind of hold everything together. Bears are also very adaptable to their environment. You'll find them in a lot of places, and oftentimes, a bear might wander into a city.
Bears, what they have to do in the winter is hibernate, because there's not a lot of food available in the temperate deciduous forest in the winter, because all the trees and every life thing sort of dies off in the winter. So what the bear has to do is have to stockpile on food and then go to sleep. All right, bears are organisms what you call case-selected species, because what they do is they have a small number of babies, but they live for a long time, and they're the parents nurture them more.
An example in our selected species is these trees. They drop a lot of seeds or acorns, pine cones, however they drop their seeds, and there's a low chance of any of them, becoming a tree. That's what makes it an our selected species.
We made it, yeah.
We made it. It took like 2 hours to get up here, but it's beautiful. I cut up my leg.
All right, now the only thing we gotta do is find our way back down. Hopefully we won't get lost.
Yeah, getting down is the hard part. You check that out. That's nature right there.
We're in a, what type of forest is this, Jeff?
So this tree is providing food sources for the woodpecker, and as you can see by the holes, and the woodpecker gets food from the trees. Now the tree is not affected by a lot, so they are in a commensalistic relationship.
So an example of mutualism would be an oak tree and a squirrel. The oak tree drops its acorns and the squirrel collects them, stores them for winter, and when they store them, they spread them around. And a lot of times, they actually forget where they put the acorns, so it helps the trees reproduce. Now you see this is what a squirrel looks like. This squirrel's natural habitat, and it would get these acorns off the ground and go store them.
Is where one organism benefits while the other is harmed, such as the deer and the tick. Check this out, guys. Okay, so the tick gets nutrients from the deer, but the deer is harmed. So this is a parasitic relationship.
So an example of a predator-prey relationship would be the squirrel and the hawk, as seen here. You see the squirrel, it eats plants and stuff like that. Next up on the food chain, the hawk, it comes and it eats the squirrel. So another problem that we face is endangered species. Some of these include the red wolf, the gray wolf, and the American elm. The wolves have been pushed to the brink of extinction by habitat destruction. The American elm is because of invasive species. So because of these problems, they're facing extinction.
All right, the competitive exclusion principle states that if there are two species that have the same ecological niche, they cannot coexist in the same habitat because they will be competing for the same resources, such as bobcat and the wolf. They cannot exist in the same habitat or in the same area because they are both apex predators and they need the same kind of resources.
Alright, so all these big trees right here, especially this one, all the bottom branches are dead, right? This is a hemlock, and that's because of this invasive species called the woolly something, I can't pronounce the last name. But if you come closer, you get a close-up on this, you look at some of these leaves right here, you see these white parts right here? That's the fungus, and it attacks the tree and kills it. Right now there's no cure, there's a treatment that can pretty much save the tree for 5 years, but a lot of these trees are doomed to die. It's pretty sad. An example of an invasive species is the wild boar. Now these guys are gonna come in, tear up the ground, and eat the natural occurring plants, okay? They can displace native species and wreak havoc on the ecosystem.
Alright, so as you can see here, we have a spring and it's coming out of the earth. So that's basically from runoff and stuff that's soaked into the soil and it's coming out at this point.
Yep. So all the leaves decaying in the soil right here, the decomposers are decaying the leaves right now, and they're making the soil more abundant and more nutritious, so it can support big trees and plants.
And the reason all the leaves are on the ground is it's cold right now, so most of these trees, except for the evergreens, are losing their leaves for the winter.
Yep. And temperate deciduous forests have a fairly moderate to high biodiversity because of its rich soil and its temperate climate.
So deforestation is a huge human impact that has a negative impact on the deciduous forest, such as deforestation. And also because the soil in deciduous forests are so fertile, all of these lands are being converted into agricultural lands for economic purposes, destroying habitats and the temperate deciduous biome in general.
So with all the environmental destruction, including deforestation, there's environmental gains to have from it. A lot of logging companies and stuff might illegally log, and it's actually really hard to enforce these regulations. Another thing that might destroy the habitat for economic gain is development of land. You know, land is expensive, so if you develop it, put an apartment there, it's going to be a lot more profitable than just sitting there with trees on it.
To prevent the deforestation seen here, the government has passed all kinds of acts, such as the Wilderness Act of 1964, the Timber Management Act, And they use these acts and as well as permits to prevent people from cutting down trees in protected areas and to save the deciduous forest.
Yeah, we just came down from the mountain. It's a little tough. I fell a few times. As you can see, check this out, see? Fell a few times.
Well, we made it.
We made it.
That's what's important.
Also,
Took a couple hours.
It took a couple of hours. I mean, the view was beautiful, so it was totally worth it. And it's hard to believe that this kind of beauty is just right
Outside our door.
Exactly, it's so close.
In our own backyard.
It's insane, dude.
It's in our own backyard.